It's Wednesday and we're in Melrose Mountain, Tryon, North Carolina at higher ground. And it's a gorgeous day out there. Started out this morning in the mid 60s. It's now in the low 70s and just a beautiful, beautiful day. They're not predicting any rain or any thunderstorms or anything else. A cool front moved through yesterday and brought a thunderstorm, but today is a gorgeous day. We're in Mark chapter 10, and we come to a subject that everybody is sensitive to because very few families are not touched by it. The subject is divorce. And I want you to listen carefully to not only Mark chapter 10, but also Matthew chapter 19, which is the parallel passage for this. Jesus has gone from the Sea of Galilee and from Capernaum, and he's down in Judea. Large crowds have followed him, and he has been preaching and teaching and healing. We find that by looking at both accounts, the Matthew account and the Mark account. So it's important for us to understand that he has a large crowd. And then come the Pharisees testing him. They're not really interested in the subject. They're just testing him to see if they can find some way of finding fault. And here it's clear that Jesus says to them, haven't you read about this subject? And he goes back to the beginning, and he says God created man, and he created female, and he said, for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and they become one flesh, no longer two, but one flesh. And what God has joined together, let no man separate. Now, he states that before he does anything else with any of the other questions, because they ask him, obviously, why did Moses grant that man could issue his wife a certificate of divorce? And he quickly answers and he says, not because that was God's perfect plan, but because the hardness of man's heart. And then we find very clearly in Matthew chapter 19, beginning verses 1 through 10, we find it very, very clear exactly what Jesus meant, because his disciples questioned him even further. They even said, wouldn't it be better not to marry at all than to be confronted with this problem? And when he is questioned further, and if you look carefully at the Matthew content, you'll see that Jesus not only again defends the fact that God never intended for divorce, and that is not his perfect will, he makes it clear that when a man or a woman divorces their husband or wife without reason, then they go on and marry someone else. They've committed adultery against that original husband or wife. However, he makes it very clear in verse 12. If she divorces him and marries another, she is committing adultery as well against him. However, he does say clearly that except for immorality, and that makes it clear that the person who divorces on the count of immorality is not guilty of this adultery cause. So let me just sum up with 3 clear points. First, God intended marriage to be forever. He intended for 2, not 2 men and not 2 women, but for 2, a man and a woman. And it makes it very clear. He created them male and female. Now, why did he create male and female if it was okay for males to marry males and females to marry females? And he says he intended for them to become one flesh, and that they should stay pure in that relationship. And he very clearly says God intended marriage forever as one flesh, a man and a woman. Couldn't be any more clear than that. And then the second thing is that Moses and he both recognized the hardness of man's heart. That is, you can't force a man to love a woman or a woman to love a man. And there are times when you cannot reconcile a man and a woman together because of the hardness of one or both of their hearts. Let me say that again. It is impossible to reconcile a man and a woman who one or both have hardened their hearts. God can, but we can't. God can put any marriage back together again. He can bring forgiveness into the hearts of even those that have had adultery committed against them. But man can't do that because of the hardness of man or woman's heart. And finally, the third point that I want to be sure that you understand is that even adultery is not the unforgivable sin. Let me say that again. When a woman or a man divorces a husband or a wife, and whether it's for immorality or not for immorality, they are guilty of the charge of adultery, but adultery is not the unforgivable sin. I think it's important that we keep a perspective on this. We should never make it simple for divorce. Divorce should always be a last resort, and it can only come when there's a hardness of the heart or immorality. That's the acceptable terms for God. Not desirable, but acceptable. Again, God intended marriage forever, one flesh. Moses and Jesus both recognized the hardness of man's heart and why it was necessary to grant divorce. And thirdly, that even adultery is not the unforgivable sin. We should all avoid sin of all kinds, and we should certainly avoid divorce at all costs. And when one comes, there is forgiveness, not only from God, but there is forgiveness for others around them. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.